It was the summer of 1976, and New York was experiencing a wave of heat that only added to the tension in the city. People filled the streets, but something darker was lurking in the shadows.
On July 29, 1976, in the Bronx, the life of 19-year-old
Donna Lauria was abruptly ended.
She and her friend, Jody Valenti, were sitting in a car, enjoying a night out.
Without warning, a figure emerged from the shadows and opened fire, killing Donna instantly and severely wounding Jody. The killer
didn't hesitate.
The violence was swift and methodical. As the investigation unfolded, authorities struggled to find any motive or pattern.
What was the connection between Donna and Jody?
Why had the killer chosen this particular pair?
The randomness of the attack left everyone on edge, but little did the police know that this would be just the beginning. The media, eager for answers, latched onto the story, calling the killer the .44 caliber killer because of the gun used.
The press, ever hungry for details, turned this case into a citywide obsession, but Berkowitz had already planned his next move, one that would leave the city in fear for months to come. After Donna Lauria's murder, Berkowitz didn't stop. The
attacks escalated over the next year, each one just as chilling as the last.
On October 23, 1976,
Berkowitz struck again, this time in Queens. Christine Freund and her fiancé, John Dial, were parked in a secluded area. Berkowitz shot both of them, killing Christine and leaving John seriously wounded.
The pattern was
clear, yet police struggled to connect the dots.
Berkowitz was careful, wearing a disguise, and each crime seemed to happen randomly, as if he were choosing victims at random. The city began to feel the grip of fear. The murders weren't just random, though they were taunting. The killer seemed to be mocking both the victims and the investigators. His attacks followed no apparent logic.
People began to question if there was any connection between the victims,
or if they were simply caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. But Berkowitz wasn't finished yet. On March 8, 1977, he shot a young couple, Valerie and Michael, in their car in the early hours of the morning. This was another murder where he followed the same method. The killer didn't just shoot. He left a piece of himself behind each time. The killings were no longer just random acts. They felt orchestrated, as though each one was building towards something greater. What made the Son of Sam case even more terrifying wasn't just the brutality of the killings, but the letters that Berkowitz sent to the press. These cryptic, taunting notes were delivered directly to the police and various New York newspapers, including the New York Daily News. Signed, Son of Sam. The letters contained rambling, disturbed thoughts from the killer, mocking the authorities for their inability to catch him.
They also revealed his twisted mind and offered unsettling glimpses into his psyche. In one of the first letters, Berkowitz wrote, "I am a monster. I am the son of Sam." He detailed how he would stalk his victims and described his killings as part of a grand, chaotic plan. He even claimed to have been ordered by a demon named Sam, who spoke to him through his neighbor's dog, a terrier named Harvey.
The letters seemed to give him an air of invincibility, and New Yorkers, already terrified by the shootings, now had to contend with the added anxiety of wondering who this taunting figure really was. The authorities, desperate for clues, began to search for any connections between the killer and the bizarre details in the letters.
They dug into Berkowitz's life, but nothing seemed to align.
He seemed like an ordinary man, quiet, shy, and a former military man with no obvious signs of violent tendencies. The letters were a challenge to everyone involved in the investigation. What did they mean? Were they real, or just the delusions of a madman?
The investigation into the Son of Sam killings was sprawling.
Hundreds of officers worked around the clock, trying to make sense of the scattered clues left behind by Berkowitz. The media frenzy only added to the pressure, with constant updates and false leads filling the airwaves.
As the months went on,
the case grew colder.
Despite the multiple eyewitness reports, the random nature of the killings made it nearly impossible to establish any patterns or clear leads. Then, in mid-1977, a key piece of evidence surfaced.
A witness reported seeing a car parked near the scene of one of the shootings. The vehicle was a dark-colored car, possibly a Ford, and the description was vague but striking enough to catch the attention of the police. This clue would eventually lead them to Berkowitz, but not in the way anyone expected. On August 10, 1977, the Son of Sam's reign of terror finally came to an end. A woman walking down the street near Berkowitz's car spotted him sitting in the vehicle.
She recognized him from a police sketch that had been circulating in the press.
Without hesitation, She approached him and flagged down a nearby officer. The
officer, unaware that they had just found the infamous son of Sam, approached Berkowitz's car.
A brief exchange followed, and when Berkowitz was asked for identification, he reached for his license. It was then that the officer realized they had arrested the killer. What followed was a shocking confession.
Berkowitz admitted to being the
son of Sam, and in his twisted explanations, he spoke of hearing voices from the dog that had compelled him to kill.
But even as he confessed, it was clear that the true story behind his actions was far from simple. Berkowitz's confession raised as many questions as it answered.
Was he a man driven by mental illness, or was he trying to hide his true motivations?
Behind a mask of delusion, his claims that a demon named Sam told him to kill were unsettling, but experts disagreed on whether these were signs of schizophrenia or a calculated attempt to claim insanity as his defense.
The more they probed, the more disturbing it became.
Was David Berkowitz a victim of his own mind, or was he simply a cold-blooded killer who had manipulated his story to avoid taking full responsibility for his actions?
The aftermath of the son of Sam killings left the community reeling.
People in New York were afraid to go out at night, and the fear of the son of Sam haunted the streets for years.
The families of the victims were left with an unhealable wound, their lives forever altered by the senseless violence. Berkowitz's trial began in 1978, and he was convicted on all charges.
He was sentenced to 6 consecutive 25 to life prison terms, but the questions surrounding his motives remained unanswered. Was there more to the story? Was he telling the truth about the dog, or was this just another attempt to deflect responsibility for his heinous acts?
Even as Berkowitz spent time in prison, the public's fascination with his case did not wane. In the years following his conviction, new theories emerged, with some suggesting that Berkowitz's actions were the result of a cult or a larger conspiracy.
His story remained a chilling reminder of the depths of human darkness and the dangers that lie hidden within seemingly ordinary lives. As David Berkowitz sat in prison, the world tried to make sense of his crimes.
What drove him to kill? Was he simply a product of his environment, or was there something inherently dark within him? In the years following his conviction, experts would attempt to unravel the mystery of the son of Sam killer, but the answers were far from clear. Berkowitz was examined by multiple psychologists, each with their own theories on what motivated his killing spree. Some argued that Berkowitz suffered from severe mental illness, while others believed his story about hearing voices from a demon was a fabrication, an excuse to avoid responsibility for his actions.
One thing was clear. Berkowitz's mind was a labyrinth full of contradictions, delusions, and a chilling lack of remorse. David Berkowitz was born Richard David Falco on June 1, 1953, in Brooklyn, New York.
He was adopted at the age of 6 months by a couple, Nathan and Pearl Berkowitz. His childhood was marked by a sense of abandonment and isolation, feelings that would stay with him throughout his life. His adoptive mother was described as kind but distant, and his adoptive father was an emotionally absent figure who passed
away when Berkowitz was a teenager. As a young boy, Berkowitz often felt like an outsider, never fully fitting in with his peers.
He was bullied, ostracized, and struggled with feelings of inadequacy.
Could these early experiences have shaped
the killer he would become? Some psychologists believe that Berkowitz's adoption played a significant role in his psychological development. The feelings of abandonment and rejection may have laid the groundwork for a sense of disconnection from humanity, creating an emotional void that he would later fill with violence. In 1971, Berkowitz enlisted in the U.S. Army. He served as a
clerk in Korea, where his time was uneventful, but his psychological state began to unravel. It was during this period that Berkowitz reportedly began experiencing feelings of paranoia and delusions.
Some believe that his time in the military may have exacerbated these tendencies, as the rigid hierarchical environment may have triggered deep-seated feelings of anger and resentment that had been building for years. While in Korea, Berkowitz's mental state continued to deteriorate. He claimed to have heard voices telling him to kill, and he began to fantasize about violence. But the trigger for his eventual killing spree came not in Korea, but back in New York, where he returned in 1974. It was then that he encountered the dog that would change his life forever. One of the most disturbing aspects of Berkowitz's
story was his claim that he was influenced by a demon named Sam, who spoke to him through his
Neighbor's dog. Berkowitz insisted that the dog's owner, some car, was the vessel through which the demon communicated with him. He described how the dog would bark incessantly, commanding him to kill, directing him to choose his victims,
and carry out the murders. Psychologists who examined Berkowitz were split on how to interpret these claims.
Some believed that Berkowitz's obsession with the dog was a delusion, a symptom of his deteriorating mental state. Others argued that it was a convenient excuse, a way for Berkowitz to explain his actions and avoid full accountability. Regardless of the cause, the voice of Sam played a central role in Berkowitz's narrative, fueling his desire to kill and leading him to commit his first murder. But was it really a voice from a demon? Or was it the manifestation of Berkowitz's
own twisted desires?
In addition to his claim of demonic possession, Berkowitz was diagnosed with several psychological disorders. Experts debated whether he suffered from paranoid schizophrenia or if his behavior was indicative of a different kind of disorder. Paranoid
schizophrenia is characterized by delusions and hallucinations, with sufferers often believing they are being persecuted or controlled by outside forces.
Berkowitz's claims about Sam and the dog fit the profile of a man suffering from this condition, but many wondered if it was just a defense mechanism, an attempt to gain sympathy and escape punishment for his actions. Another theory presented
by psychologists was that Berkowitz suffered from antisocial personality disorder (APD), a condition often characterized by a lack of empathy, disregard for societal norms, and a tendency to engage in violent or criminal behavior without remorse. People with APD often show little to no remorse for their actions, and Berkowitz's behavior seemed to fit this profile.
He appeared to take pleasure in his killings, even going so far as to taunt the police with his letters. Could the son of Sam simply be a cold-blooded killer with a deeply ingrained personality disorder? Or was he a man undone by mental illness?
Berkowitz's case didn't just intrigue law enforcement and psychologists. It captivated the public.
The media frenzy surrounding the son of Sam killings only intensified after his capture.
People across the nation followed the case with obsessive interest, dissecting every piece of evidence and speculating about the motivations behind the crimes. One aspect that intrigued the public was Berkowitz's repeated references to Sam and his claims of being a pawn in a supernatural game. His letters to the media were filled with cryptic messages, references to demons and taunts aimed at the police. People wondered if there was more to the story than Berkowitz was telling.
Was he part of a cult?
Was there a deeper conspiracy
at play? This fascination only grew after Berkowitz's arrest. In interviews with reporters, he seemed to relish in the attention.
His calm demeanor during his confession and his lack of remorse added to the chilling nature of his crimes.
Berkowitz would later claim that the media attention and public obsession with his case made him feel powerful, as though he were in control of the narrative.
But was this true? Or was he simply playing the role of a villain in a story much bigger
than himself? The arrest of David Berkowitz, the infamous son of Sam, brought an end to the killing spree that had terrorized New York City for over a year. But while the police and the media could now breathe a sigh of relief, the psychological scars left on the city and its residents were not so easily erased.
The fear and paranoia that Berkowitz had instilled in the hearts of New Yorkers lingered long after his capture, and the echoes of his violence were felt throughout the community. As news spread of his arrest, the residents of New York City exhaled collectively.
The killer, who had been hiding in plain sight, was finally in custody, and the mystery surrounding his identity was solved.
But that was only the beginning of a long, difficult road to recovery for the people who had lived in fear of the son of Sam for so long. On August 10, 1977, the night David Berkowitz was arrested, the city seemed to shift from a state of constant
dread to a stunned disbelief.
Reports from the police scanner confirmed that the son of Sam had been caught after a sharp-eyed woman recognized Berkowitz's car and flagged down an officer.
The arrest was dramatic, swift, and a long-awaited
end to a dark chapter in New York City's history, but the relief that followed was bittersweet.
The city had lived with the constant fear that anyone could be the next victim. The deaths of 6 young men and women, brutally gunned down in their cars, had left deep scars on the community.
But now that Berkowitz was behind bars, would New Yorkers ever truly feel safe again?
In interviews with the press, many residents voiced mixed feelings.
It's over, but how do you erase the fear? One resident told reporters.
How do you unsee the news reports every night? The pictures of those poor victims. The fear that had spread through the streets of New York for over a year couldn't simply vanish overnight. While New York City began its process of healing, the families of Berkowitz victims faced their own painful journey. The victims Donald Lauria, Jody Valenti, Christine Freund, John Dial, Valerie and Michael, and the surviving victims were left behind, their lives forever altered by the brutality of the killings. For Donald Lauria's family, the murder of their daughter and sister had come as a violent shock. Donna's parents, devastated by her death, found it difficult to find closure, even after Berkowitz's arrest.
Their mourning was complicated by the public nature of the case.
Every new update in the press, every report of Berkowitz's letters or delusions, felt like another cruel reminder of their loss. Similarly, Jody Valenti, who survived the initial shooting, struggled with both physical and emotional scars. The
trauma of that night, the violence, and the loss of her friend would stay with her forever.
She was left to contend with not only the memory of the event itself, but also the public's relentless attention on the case. The scrutiny of her life as the lone survivor added another layer of complexity to an already painful ordeal. The impact of the murders extended beyond the families of the victims. It was felt by every New Yorker who lived under the shadow of fear during those long months. The city had been paralyzed, with people reluctant to go out after dark, suspicious of any car parked too long or too close to their own.
For some, the
fear lingered for years, even after Berkowitz was captured and convicted. The media, ever hungry for sensational stories, became deeply involved in the Son of Sam case.
As Berkowitz's letters were released to the press, they were analyzed, scrutinized, and dissected. The press coverage was intense, with reports of Berkowitz's crimes dominating the headlines and evening news. Newspapers reported on every detail
of the investigation. Berkowitz's bizarre claims about his neighbor's dog, his demonic visions, and the cryptic messages he left for the media kept the story in the public eye for months. The media frenzy surrounding the case was so all-consuming that it became almost impossible to separate fact from sensationalism. The media also became obsessed with the idea of Berkowitz as a symbol of evil, someone beyond the comprehension of
ordinary people. Headlines referred to him as a monster, the devil incarnate, and the embodiment of pure evil.
This only fueled the public's fear and fascination, creating a sense of mystique around the killer. While many outlets praised the police for their perseverance and eventual success in capturing Berkowitz, others criticized the investigation,
questioning why it took so long to catch him.
The public had been kept in the dark for so long, and when Berkowitz was finally caught, many people felt that they had been misled, that they had been left vulnerable. The obsession didn't stop after Berkowitz's arrest. Even as Berkowitz went on trial, the media continued to cover every detail. He became a fixture of media fascination. His face splashed across newspapers and magazines, his story part of the cultural conversation. As Berkowitz settled into his life in prison, a new narrative began to take shape. He started to talk about
his past, his childhood, and the events that led him to commit the murders.
But it wasn't just his actions that the public was now focused on, it was the mystery behind them.
Was Berkowitz a madman? Or was he a man who had been manipulated by forces beyond his control? Berkowitz himself began to shift his story.
In interviews and letters, he started to reflect on his crimes, even expressing remorse for the pain he had caused.
His claims of being influenced by a demon named Sam began to sound less convincing as time went on.
Was he simply trying to justify his actions, or had he truly been possessed by a force beyond his control?
The questions about Berkowitz's psychological state continued to dominate the public's interest. His case became a complex psychological puzzle, with psychologists and criminologists alike offering theories about his motivations.
Some believed Berkowitz's delusions about the dog were symptoms of schizophrenia. Others suspected he had been driven by deeper psychological issues, such as a need for control or a deep-seated anger towards society. Was Berkowitz a true victim of his own mind, or was he just an incredibly calculating killer who had used his mental health as a defense? And was the truth about his actions more complex than the public could ever understand?
Even after decades, the Son of Sam case continues to intrigue the public.
Why does this story still resonate so strongly?
Why,
after all these years, does the name David Berkowitz still carry such weight? One of the main reasons for the enduring fascination is the mystery surrounding Berkowitz's true motivations. Was he a man with a fractured mind who succumbed to his delusions, Or was he simply a person capable of great evil who used mental illness as an excuse? The unanswered questions, especially the ones about the demon dog and his apparent manipulation of the media, leave a sense of unease, as though there are pieces of the puzzle that will never fit. Moreover, the public's obsession with true crime, particularly high-profile cases like Son of Sam, reflects a deeper societal need to understand the darkness that lurks in the human psyche. Berkowitz's case is a window into the mind of a killer, but it's also a reflection of the ways in which society grapples with evil, trauma, and justice. As Berkowitz remains in prison, now serving life sentences for his crimes, the mystery of the Son of Sam killings may never truly be solved.
For many, it's not just about what Berkowitz did, it's about what we can never fully understand. The case of David Berkowitz, the Son of Sam, remains an unsolved riddle in many ways. His claims about demons, the dog, and his twisted relationship with his past have left a lingering sense of ambiguity. Was Berkowitz truly under the influence of forces beyond his control? Or was he simply a man who chose to kill and then used his delusions to escape responsibility for his actions?
In the next chapter, we will explore the aftermath of Berkowitz's confessions, the impact his crimes had on the victims' families, and the lingering psychological scars left on New York City. But the biggest question remains: could this crime have been prevented? What if someone had seen the signs earlier?
Stay tuned as we continue to uncover the details of this chilling case. More may be revealed about David Berkowitz than we ever expected. Subscribe, like, share, and leave review in the comment below.